Watch a child sometime, not when they are playing or laughing. Watch them when they are alone, drawing something, building something with their hands, staring out a window. You will notice something that almost every child on the planet does without being taught. They hum a quiet, steady vibration that seems to come from nowhere. No melody, no words. Just a low, sustained tone that fills their body and spills out through closed lips. They do it without thinking. They do it when they feel safe. And they do it when they need to feel safe. Every parent has heard it. Most of them ignore it. None of them realize what it actually is. That hum is not a habit. It is not boredom. It is not the beginning of a song that never gets finished. That hum is a biological mechanism. It is the body's oldest and most direct method of activating a nerve that controls sleep, digestion, heart rate, inflammation, and the ability to feel calm in your own skin. Children do it instinctively because their nervous systems have not yet learned to suppress it. Adults stopped doing it years ago. And that is one of the reasons you cannot sleep. I am going to show you exactly what happens inside the body when a human being produces a sustained hum. I am going to show you why children do it naturally, and why adults lost the ability without realizing what they were losing. And I am going to show you the research that proves this simple vibration can reverse one of the most stubborn and destructive health problems of our time. Insomnia, not the kind where you stay up late scrolling your phone. The real kind. The kind where your body is exhausted, but your brain will not turn off. The kind where you lie in bed staring at the ceiling for hours. The kind that has been slowly dismantling your health for months or years. And nothing you have tried has been able to fix it. There is a nerve in your body called the vagus nerve. It runs from your brainstem all the way down to your abdomen, branching out to touch your heart, your lungs, your throat, your stomach, and your intestines. It is the longest cranial nerve you have, and it is the master regulator of your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system responsible for rest, recovery, digestion, and sleep. When the vagus nerve is functioning well, falling asleep is effortless. Your heart rate slows naturally as evening approaches. Your muscles relax. Your breathing deepens. Your mind quiets. The transition from waking to sleeping is smooth and automatic, because the vagus nerve is sending constant signals to your brain that say it is safe to shut down. When the vagus nerve is weakened, and it weakens in almost every adult over time, through chronic stress, poor breathing habits, and a lifestyle that keeps the sympathetic nervous system running all day, that transition breaks. Your body reaches the pillow exhausted, but your nervous system refuses to stand down. Your heart rate stays elevated. Your muscles stay tense. Your mind races through thoughts you have no interest in thinking. You are caught between two systems that cannot agree. Your body says sleep. Your nervous system says threat. This is not a psychological problem. It is not something wrong with your thoughts. It is a nerve that has lost its tone like a muscle that has not been used in months. And children hold the key to restoring it because they never stopped using it. That hum you hear coming from a child sitting quietly in the back seat of a car is the sound of a vagus nerve being activated through the most direct pathway available to the human body. The vibration passes through the larynx and physically stimulates a branch of the varus nerve called the recurrent laryngeal nerve. This branch wraps around the aorta and runs upward through the throat, passing within millimeters of the vocal cords. When the vocal cords vibrate during humming, the recurrent laryngeal nerve is stimulated mechanically, not chemically, not psychologically. Physically, the vibration is the stimulus, and that mechanical stimulus triggers a cascade of neurological events that are now well documented in the research literature. The vagus nerve fires. Acetylcholine is released at its terminal points throughout the body. So, as the heart rate decreases, blood pressure drops, inflammatory markers decrease, and the parasympathetic nervous system shifts from background activity to dominant operation. This is the exact neurological state required for sleep onset, not relaxation in the way most people think of it, actual parasympathetic dominance, a measurable shift in autonomic balance that allows the brain to initiate the sleep cycle. A study published in the International Journal of Neuroscience found that sustained vocal vibration, which includes humming, produces immediate and measurable increases in heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is the gold standard biomarker for vagal tone. Higher heart rate variability means the vagus nerve is strong and the nervous system is flexible. It can accelerate when needed and decelerate when the threat passes. Lower heart rate variability means the vagus nerve is weak and the nervous system is rigid. It gets stuck in activation mode and cannot shift into the rest state that sleep requires. Insomnia researchers have known for years that people with chronic insomnia have significantly lower heart rate variability than people who sleep well. A meta-analysis published in Sleep Medicine reviews examined multiple studies comparing the autonomic profiles of insomnia patients with healthy sleepers. The results were consistent across every study. Insomnia patients showed music-reduced parasympathetic activity and elevated sympathetic tone, not just at night, but throughout the entire day. Their nervous systems were running in a perpetual state of low-grade activation that prevented the natural transition into sleep. This is where the science becomes powerful, because the same studies show that heart rate variability is not fixed. It responds to input. Specifically, it responds to vagal stimulation. And humming is one of the most potent natural vagal stimulators ever measured. Research from the European Journal of Applied Physiology demonstrated that 5 minutes of sustained humming produces significant changes in heart rate variability, systolic blood pressure, and nitric oxide levels. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It opens blood vessels, increases blood flow, and reduces the physiological markers of stress. 5 minutes of humming produced all of these effects in subjects who were not meditating, not exercising, not taking any substance, just humming. The researchers measured the effects in real time and found that the parasympathetic shift began within the first 60 seconds. By the third minute, the autonomic balance had measurably changed. By the fifth minute, the subjects were in a distinctly different neurological state than when they started. Their bodies had shifted from sympathetic arousal to parasympathetic engagement, which is the exact transition that insomnia prevents from happening at bedtime. Now, here is what makes this particularly fascinating from a neuroscience perspective. Children do this automatically. They do not need instructions. They do not need a breathing app or a meditation teacher or a sleep supplement. Their nervous systems are wired to seek vagal stimulation through vocal vibration because the developing brain requires parasympathetic activation for growth, for memory consolidation, for emotional regulation, and for the deep restorative sleep that childhood development depends on. Stephen Porges, the neuroscientist who developed the polyagal theory, has spent decades studying the connection between vocalization and autonomic regulation. His research shows that the neural circuits controlling the voice and the neural circuits controlling the heart are deeply intertwined. They share the same brainstem nuclei. When you activate the vocal system through humming, you simultaneously activate the cardiac vagal brake, which is the mechanism that slows the heart and promotes the calm state necessary for sleep. Porges calls this the social engagement system, and it operates through the ventral vagal pathway, which is the most evolved branch of the vagus nerve. When this pathway is active, the muscles of the face relax. The voice becomes warm and melodic. The middle ear muscles tune to human speech frequencies, and the heart slows to a resting rhythm. This is the state of safety. This is the state that allows sleep, and humming is one of the fastest ways to activate it. Children live in this state naturally for large portions of the day. Their ventral vagal pathways are active during play, during connection with caregivers, and during those quiet moments when they hum to themselves without any external reason. As adults, chronic stress gradually shifts the autonomic balance away from ventral vagal engagement and towards sympathetic dominance. The humming stops, the vocal warmth diminishes, the heart loses its variability, and sleep becomes a battle instead of a surrender. There is another mechanism at play that connects humming to sleep in a way that most people never consider. When the vagus nerve activates strongly, the brain releases oxytocin. Most people associate oxytocin with bonding and social connection, but its role in sleep regulation is profound and underappreciated. Oxytocin directly suppresses cortisol production. Cortisol is the hormone that keeps you alert and vigilant in a healthy circadian rhythm. Cortisol peaks in the morning and declines steadily through the evening, reaching its lowest point around midnight. In people with chronic insomnia, this decline is disrupted. Cortisol remains elevated into the late evening, and the brain interprets this as a signal that the environment is not safe enough for sleep. Humming triggers oxytocin release through vagal activation, and that oxytocin actively drives cortisol levels down. This is not a subtle effect. Research from the University of Zurich showed that increased oxytocin availability in the evening is directly correlated with faster sleep onset and deeper slow-wave sleep. Slow-wave sleep is the most restorative phase of the sleep cycle. It is when the brain clears metabolic waste products, consolidates memory, and repairs cellular damage. People with insomnia are often severely deficient in slow-wave sleep, and the oxytocin released during humming helps restore access to this critical phase. The circadian timing of humming also matters more than most people realize. Your body has an internal clock that regulates dozens of physiological processes throughout the day. Cortisol production, melatonin secretion, body temperature regulation, and autonomic balance all follow circadian patterns. When you hum consistently at the same time each evening, you are not just activating the vagus nerve in that moment. You are training your circadian system to expect a parasympathetic shift at that time. Over weeks, your body begins to anticipate the transition. Cortisol starts declining earlier. Melatonin production increases at the appropriate time. The entire physiological cascade that prepares your body for sleep begins aligning with your bedtime in a way that feels automatic. If this information is connecting something for you, if you are starting to understand why your body has been fighting sleep despite being exhausted, take a moment right now to subscribe to this channel and leave a like on this video. This kind of science rarely reaches the people who need it most. Every subscription helps this content find someone who has been suffering with insomnia and has been told there is nothing they can do about it except take medication. There is something they can do. It is something they used to do as a child, and the science behind it is rock solid. Let me go deeper into the mechanism because this is where most explanations stop, and this is exactly where they should keep going. When you hum, the vibration does not just stimulate the recurrent laryngeal nerve, it also creates resonance in the sinuses. A landmark study by researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that humming increases nasal nitric oxide production by 15 times compared to quiet exhalation 15 times. Nitric oxide in the nasal passages serves as a first-line antimicrobial defense and a powerful vasodilator. But its effects go beyond the sinuses. When nitric oxide is produced in the nasal cavity and inhaled into the lungs during the next breath, it enters the bloodstream and produces systemic vasodilation. Blood vessels throughout the body relax, peripheral blood flow increases, the hands and feet warm, muscle tension decreases. These are all hallmarks of parasympathetic activation, and they are all prerequisites for sleep. The connection between humming and sleep goes even deeper than vasodilation. There is a structure in the brainstem called the nucleus tractus solitarius. This is the primary receiving station for vagal input from the body. Every signal the vagus nerve sends from the heart, the lungs, the gut, and the throat arrives here. When the nucleus tractus solitarius receives strong parasympathetic input, it activates descending pathways that suppress the sympathetic nervous system and promote the neurological conditions for sleep onset. Research published in the journal Frontiers in Neuroscience mapped these pathways in detail and showed that vagal afferent stimulation directly modulates the activity of the locus coeruleus, which is the brain's primary norepinephrine center. Norepinephrine is the neurotransmitter of alertness and arousal. When it is elevated, you are awake and vigilant. When the vagus nerve fires strongly enough, the locus coeruleus reduces its output. Norepinephrine levels drop and the brain shifts from wakefulness towards sleep. This is the physiological mechanism, not a relaxation trick, not a placebo. A measurable neurological cascade that begins with a vibration in your throat and ends with your brain chemistry shifting into sleep mode. The reason this mechanism has been overlooked for so long is partly cultural. Modern sleep science has focused heavily on cognitive behavioral approaches and pharmaceutical interventions. Both have value, but neither addresses the autonomic foundation of sleep. You cannot think your way into parasympathetic dominance, and a sleeping pill does not restore vagal tone. It overrides the brain's wakefulness signals chemically, but the underlying nervous system dysfunction remains untouched. The moment the medication wears off, the insomnia returns, often worse than before. Let me share something with you before we continue. There is a protocol I came across called the Vagus Nerve Reset Protocol. I followed every step in it personally, and it transformed the way my nervous system transitions into rest. It goes far beyond what any single video can cover. It is a complete system that works your vagus nerve through multiple pathways. Breathing, vocalization, cold exposure, and specific techniques designed to rebuild the kind of vagal tone that makes sleep natural again. What I found inside was not just theory. It was practical step by step, and the results were fast. My body started responding differently within the first couple of weeks. The tension I carried into bed started dissolving before I even lay down. The racing thoughts that used to keep me awake for hours began to lose their grip. It was not willpower. It was my nervous system physically changing. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. You already know something needs to change. This is how it starts. Now, let me show you exactly how to use humming as a sleep tool, because the details matter, and most people get them wrong. The technique is not about melody. It is not about pitch. It is not about volume. It is about sustained vibration at a frequency that maximizes vagal stimulation through the lingual pathway. Find a comfortable position, sitting upright or lying on your back with your knees bent slightly. If you are using this specifically for sleep, Lying down is fine. Close your eyes. Take 3 normal breaths through your nose to settle your body. Then, on the 4th exhale, close your lips gently and produce a low, steady hum, not from your throat, from your chest. You should feel the vibration resonating in your sternum, your throat, and ideally, your sinuses. If you can feel it in your cheekbones and forehead, you are in the right frequency range for maximum nitric oxide production. Sustain the hum for the full length of your exhale. Do not force it. Let it last as long as your breath naturally allows. When the hum fades, inhale slowly and deeply through your nose. Feel your belly expand, then hum again on the next exhale. The cycle is simple. Inhale through the nose. Exhale as a sustained hum. The ratio should naturally settle into something close to 4 seconds inhale and 8 to 10 seconds of humming. Exhale. This 2:1 ratio is critical because it maximizes the time your vagus nerve spends active in each breath cycle. Here is what happens in your body when you do this. Within the first 30 seconds, the recurrent lingual nerve begins receiving mechanical stimulation from the vibrating vocal cords. It transmits this signal up to the brainstem. The nucleus tractus solitarius registers the input and begins activating the parasympathetic cascade. Your heart rate starts to decrease. Within 60 seconds, the decrease becomes measurable. Your heart rate variability begins to increase, which means the vagus nerve is gaining influence over the cardiac cycle. The sympathetic brake is loosening. By the second minute, the nitric oxide effect compounds with the vagal effect. Your blood vessels are dilating. Warmth spreads to your extremities. The muscles in your jaw, your neck, and your shoulders begin music to release tension you did not consciously know you were holding. Your breathing slows further without effort. The shift is happening below the level of thought. Your brain is not deciding to relax. Your brain stem is responding to physiological input. Between the 3rd and 5th minute, something remarkable happens. The gap between thoughts widens. The mental chatter that characterizes insomnia begins to lose its momentum. This is not because you meditated the thoughts away. It is because the locus coeruleus is reducing its norepinephrine output in response to the sustained vagal activation. The neurochemical fuel for rumination is being withdrawn without norepinephrine driving the alertness circuits. Thoughts slow down naturally. They lose their urgency. They stop demanding attention. By the 7th or 8th minute, most people report a sensation they describe as heaviness. Not an unpleasant heaviness, a weighted, warm, sinking feeling. The eyelids become difficult to keep open. The body feels dense and settled. This is the parasympathetic shift reaching its full expression. The brain is transitioning from beta wave activity, which is the frequency of active thinking and problem-solving, toward alpha and theta frequencies, which are the gateways to sleep. If you continue humming beyond 10 minutes, many people fall asleep during the practice itself. This is not failure. This is the point. Your nervous system has been waiting for this signal. The vibration in your throat is the same signal it received naturally as a child, every time you hummed without knowing why. You are not learning something new. You are remembering something your body already knows how to do. There is a reason this works for insomnia specifically, and not just for general relaxation. Insomnia is fundamentally a disorder of autonomic state. Research from Stanford University's sleep lab has consistently shown that people with chronic insomnia have elevated sympathetic nervous system activity during the pre-sleep period. Their fight-or-flight system is active precisely when it needs to be quiet. Their cortisol levels are elevated in the evening when they should be declining. Their body temperature follows an abnormal circadian curve, and their heart rate variability is suppressed. Every one of these markers improves with consistent vagal stimulation. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine followed patients who practice vagal stimulation techniques before bed for 8 weeks. The results showed significant improvements in sleep onset latency, which is the time it takes to fall asleep. Total sleep time increased. Sleep efficiency, which is the percentage of time in bed actually spent sleeping, improved measurably. And the number of nighttime awakenings decreased. The subjects in the study did not take any medication. They did not change their diet. They did not undergo cognitive behavioral therapy. They stimulated their vagus nerve, and their sleep improved because the fundamental autonomic barrier to sleep was being addressed directly. There is another dimension to this that connects children and adults in a way that most sleep researchers have not explored. Children do not just hum when they are happy. They also hum when they are afraid. When a child is lying in a dark room and feels scared, one of the first things they do instinctively is hum or make a quiet vocal sound. This is not a random response. This is the nervous system attempting to self-regulate through vagal activation. The child's brainstem knows without any conscious understanding that vocal vibration sends safety signals through the vagus nerve to the brain. The hum says there is no threat. The hum says the body can come down from alert. Researchers at the University of Maryland studied vocalizations in children during moments of stress and found that self-generated vocal sounds correlated with measurable decreases in cortisol and increases in parasympathetic markers. The children who vocalized during stressful situations recovered their autonomic baseline faster than children who remained silent. The body was using sound as a physiological regulation tool, not an emotional coping mechanism, a biological reset switch. Adults lying in bed with insomnia are in a neurologically similar state to that child in the dark. The threat is not a monster under the bed. The threat is the accumulated sympathetic activation of an entire day that the nervous system has not been able to discharge. The heart is racing. The muscles are tight. The mind, it's scanning. The body is in defense mode at the exact moment it needs to be in rest mode. And the solution is the same one the child discovered instinctively. A sustained vibration that physically activates the nerve responsible for shifting the body from threat to safety. The difference is that adults have been conditioned to suppress vocalization. We are taught to be quiet. We are taught that making sounds is childish or strange. We lose the instinct that could save our sleep because somewhere along the way we decided that maturity meant silence. But the vagus nerve does not care about social norms. It responds to physical stimulation. And humming provides that stimulation more efficiently than almost any other natural method available. Now, let me address something that matters for long-term results. A single session of humming before bed will produce a measurable shift in your autonomic state. You will likely fall asleep faster and sleep more deeply on the first night you try it. But the real transformation happens over weeks and months of consistent practice, because the vagus nerve, like a muscle, responds to repeated stimulation by increasing its baseline tone. What this means is that after 2 to 3 weeks of nightly humming practice, your resting vagal tone begins to increase even when you are not humming. Your heart rate variability during the day improves. Your stress response becomes less reactive. The sympathetic spikes that accumulate throughout a normal day become smaller and resolve faster. And by the time evening arrives, you are already closer to the parasympathetic state that sleep requires. You need less time humming to reach the threshold. Eventually, the transition into sleep becomes natural again. the way it was when you were 7 years old, and your body knew exactly how to let go. Research from the HeartMath Institute has documented this progression in detail. They tracked heart rate variability in subjects who practiced sustained vagal stimulation techniques over 12-week periods. The data showed that vagal tone increased progressively, with the most dramatic gains occurring between weeks 3 and 6. By week 8, the participants had established a new autonomic baseline that persisted throughout the day. Their resting heart rates were lower, their blood pressure was more stable, and their sleep quality scores had improved significantly compared to baseline. The implications of this are important for anyone who has tried a sleep remedy and given up after 1 or 2 nights because it did not work. Vagal stimulation is not like a sleeping pill that either works immediately or does not work at all. It is a physiological training process. The first night produces a real shift, but the deeper transformation builds over time. By the second week, you may notice that you are falling asleep faster without even thinking about it. By the third week, the quality of your sleep changes. You wake up feeling different, more rested, more present, less like you spent the night running from something. By the end of the first month, something subtle but profound begins to happen during the day. You notice that your stress response is less intense. Situations that would have sent your heart racing now produce a smaller reaction. This is because vagal tone is not a nighttime phenomenon. It is a full-body, full-day baseline that determines how your entire nervous system operates. Better sleep rebuilds vagal tone. Better vagal tone improves daytime resilience. Improved daytime resilience reduces the sympathetic load that accumulates by evening, and a lower sympathetic load means easier sleep. The whole system begins to work in your favor instead of against you. There is a compounding effect that makes this even more powerful. Better sleep improves vagal tone, and better vagal tone improves sleep. Once you break the cycle of sympathetic dominance and insomnia by introducing regular vagal stimulation through humming, the improvements begin to build on each other. Each night of better sleep makes your nervous system slightly more resilient the next day. Each day of higher vagal tone makes the transition to sleep slightly smoother the next night. The cycle that was destroying your health reverses direction and begins restoring it. I want to give you a complete protocol for using this tonight. Not next week. Tonight. Here is the sequence that research supports and that produces the strongest results. 30 minutes before your intended sleep time, put your phone in another room, not on the nightstand. In another room, the blue light and the cognitive stimulation from screens suppress melatonin production and activate the sympathetic nervous system. Removing the phone is not optional. It is part of the protocol. If you use your phone as an alarm, buy a simple alarm clock. The investment will pay for itself in sleep quality within the first week. Dim the lights in your bedroom. Bright overhead lighting signals daytime to your circadian system and suppresses the melatonin surge that should be building as you approach sleep. Use a bedside lamp or no light at all. The darkness is a signal to your pineal gland that nighttime has arrived and melatonin production should accelerate. This prepares the neurochemical environment that the humming will activate. Lie down in bed on your back or on your side, whichever is more comfortable. Close your eyes. Begin with 5 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Feel your belly rise. Exhale through your nose for 8 counts. Feel your belly fall. This activates the vagus nerve through the diaphragmatic pathway. The diaphragm sits directly on the vagus nerve trunk, and when it contracts fully during a deep belly breath, it physically stimulates the nerve through mechanical pressure. This is your first layer of vagal activation. After 5 minutes of breathing, transition to humming. Keep your lips gently closed. Produce a low, sustained hum on each exhale. Feel the vibration in your chest, your throat, and your sinuses. Inhale through your nose. Hum on the exhale. Continue for 5 to 10 minutes. This is your second layer of vagal activation. Now you are stimulating the vagus nerve through 2 separate pathways simultaneously. The diaphragmatic pathway through breathing and the lingual pathway through vocal vibration. If you find your mind wandering during this process, do not fight it. Do not try to clear your thoughts. Simply return your attention to the vibration. Feel it in your chest. Feel it in your throat. The vibration is the anchor. It is doing the work, regardless of what your thoughts are doing. Your brainstem does not care whether you are thinking about tomorrow's meeting or about nothing at all. It is receiving the vagal input and responding to it at a level far below conscious awareness. Most people will begin to feel the parasympathetic shift within the first 3 minutes of humming. The jaw softens, the shoulders drop, the hands warm, the eyelids become heavy. If you fall asleep during the humming, that is the goal. You did not fail at a technique. The technique worked. Your nervous system received the input it needed and initiated the sleep process. That is success. If you are still awake after 10 minutes of humming, transition back to the breathing. 4 counts in, 8 counts out through the nose, belly only, continue until sleep comes. Some people on the first night need 15 to 20 minutes to override the accumulated sympathetic activation. That is normal. The time will decrease with each night as your vagal tone increases and the transition requires less effort. There are a few things you should know about what might happen in the first week. Some people experience vivid dreams. This is a sign that you are reaching deeper stages of sleep that your insomnia was previously preventing. REM sleep, which is the stage where dreams occur, requires strong parasympathetic tone. As your vagal function improves, your brain accesses REM more fully. The dreams are a marker of progress. Some people experience increased emotional sensitivity in the first few days. Emotions may surface that seem unrelated to anything happening in your life. Sadness, frustration, or a wave of tenderness that catches you off guard. This happens because chronic sympathetic dominance suppresses emotional processing. When the parasympathetic system comes back online, stored emotional energy begins to release. This is not a side effect. It is part of the healing process. Let the emotions pass without analysis. They are your nervous system discharging what it has been holding. Others notice changes in their digestion. Increased gut activity, gurgling, changes in appetite. The vagus nerve controls the entire digestive tract, and as its tone improves, the gut begins functioning more efficiently. This usually stabilizes within the first week. Now, let me explain why this approach succeeds, where other insomnia treatments often fail. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia works by changing the thoughts and behaviors that perpetuate sleep problems. It is effective for many people, but it does not directly address the autonomic nervous system. You can change every thought pattern and sleep behavior and still lie awake if your vagus nerve is too music weak to initiate the parasympathetic shift that sleep requires. Sleeping pills work by chemically suppressing the arousal circuits in the brain. They produce unconsciousness, but they do not produce natural sleep architecture. The deep restorative stages of sleep are often diminished or absent under medication, and the vagus nerve remains undertoned because the pills do nothing to stimulate it. The insomnia returns the moment you stop taking them, often worse than before because the underlying deficit was never addressed. There is also a dependency risk that makes long-term use problematic for many people. Humming attacks the problem at its root. It does not manage symptoms. It does not override brain chemistry. It restores the autonomic function that sleep depends on. It rebuilds vagal tone, the same way physical therapy rebuilds a weakened muscle progressively, naturally, and permanently, as long as the practice continues. There are no side effects. There is no dependency. There is no tolerance buildup that requires increasing doses. The vagus nerve does not develop resistance to its own activation. If anything, it becomes more responsive over time as its baseline tone increases. There is one more piece of the puzzle that I think will resonate with anyone who has dealt with insomnia for a long time. The fear of not sleeping becomes its own barrier to sleep. After weeks or months of lying awake, the bedroom itself becomes associated with frustration and alertness. The act of getting into bed triggers anticipatory anxiety. Will tonight be another bad night? How will I function tomorrow? What is wrong with me that I cannot do something every child on the planet does effortlessly? That anxiety is a sympathetic nervous system response. It elevates cortisol and norepinephrine at the exact moment they should be declining, and it creates a feedback loop that becomes more entrenched with every sleepless night. Humming interrupts this loop at the physiological level. It does not ask you to stop worrying about sleep. It simply activates the nerve that makes worrying about sleep neurochemically difficult. When the vagus nerve fires strongly enough, the locus coeruleus quiets. No epinephrine drops. Cortisol production slows, and the anxiety about sleep dissolves. Not because you solved it mentally, but because the neurochemical foundation for the anxiety was removed. This is why children do not have performance anxiety about sleep. Their vagus nerves are strong. Their parasympathetic systems are dominant in the evening. The transition from playing to sleeping is seamless because no sympathetic barrier exists. They hum, they yawn, they close their eyes, and they are gone. That effortless transition is not lost forever. It is waiting on the other side of a vagus nerve that remembers how to do this if you give it the right signal. The signal is a vibration in your throat that you used to make every day as a child. You stopped making it because no one told you it mattered. Now you know it matters. Now you know the science behind it. Now you know the mechanism. And tonight, you can use it. There is one more thing I want to leave you with. If you have a partner who also struggles with sleep, try this together. Research on vagal tone and co-regulation shows that when two people practice slow breathing or humming in close proximity, their autonomic nervous systems begin to synchronize. Heart rate variability patterns align. Cortisol levels decrease faster when practiced in pairs than alone. The presence of another body generating parasympathetic signals amplifies your own nervous system's response. This is not romantic advice. This is neuroscience. The vagus nerve is deeply social. It was designed to function in community, not in isolation. Humming together before sleep activates the social engagement system that Porres described and creates a shared autonomic environment that makes sleep onset faster and deeper for both people. If you live alone, know that the practice works just as effectively on its own. The vagus nerve does not require another person to activate. Your breath and your voice are sufficient. But if you have the option, sharing this practice with someone you trust adds a layer of co-regulation that accelerates the results. Comment below and tell me how long you have been dealing with insomnia. I read every comment, and your experience shapes the direction of future videos on this channel. Share this with someone you know who struggles to sleep. They have probably tried everything, except the one thing their body has been asking for since childhood. Your vagus nerve has not forgotten how to bring you into sleep. It has been waiting for you to give it the input it needs. A slow breath through the nose. A sustained hum through closed lips. A vibration that passes through your throat and tells your brainstem that it is safe to let go. Children know this without being taught. Tonight, you remember this is parasympathetic. See you in the next one.